Okay, good morning. We're back here at the IEF studio. In this particular session, actually, we have a interesting topic, which is a deep dive from the ideas that Pa Ilham left us with. And I look at it always as layers of an industry. When you set up an industry or a sector, it develops in layers. You have the digital industry that was set up broadly offering basic services to then going and adding layers of fintech, adding layers of security, and now we have reached a stage where we are adding layers of optimization. Optimization plays a big role, not just because of you optimize cost, but you also optimize the delivery, the logistics, and in ways that can help us reduce the carbon footprint. I think one of the key takeaways in the previous session was, does digitalization have negative impacts on the planet, on the societies? Well, it does. It does increase consumption of power. It does increase consumption. Various other factors get affected. We don't seem to see that because we look at the economy in unilateral terms, not realizing how interconnected everything is. So this panel discussion is going to deep dive a little bit into optimization issues. Where do we think optimization should be? Where is it right now? And we're going to go into some ideas and thoughts of where Indonesia can learn and take up at a much faster adoption than some of the markets locally. I think we have a few seats. Anybody who is part of the panel, kindly take the seats in the front. Can we have you in one of the chairs right next to... So let's get started. The goal here is to finish by 12:15 because at 1 p.m. we have Sandiaga Uno here for the digital readiness and future of work topic. I feel all of it is very interconnected. We started out with what Ilham had to say, and we're going to use that as a momentum into the discussion we're going to have now. And I took the liberty of interviewing one of our board of governors, James Castle, who has an interesting view from somebody who has been in the market for 35 years running business forums, and he's connecting what they used to do 35 years ago to what they're doing now, and he's still running forums where he talks about digital. So it's a very interesting perspective, I believe, of somebody who's connected across generations. So if I may ask my team, Ciara, could you play the video from Ilham? It's about 6-7 minutes.
Hello, Jim. It's great to have you back.
Can we have the volume up, please?
Forum, and we are really grateful for your time. Thank you for logging in from the US, from Washington, D.C. I know that because of the time zone difference, it's difficult for you to be here in person, so we thought we'll have a session with you and hear some of the views that you have about how you see the Indonesian economy progressing, especially in relevance to the fact that we just finished a very successful G20, and how do you see the business climate going forward?
Well, hello, Sachin, and hello, everyone, all the participants. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, but it's great to be part of the Indonesian Executive Forum, and so I'm very happy to have this opportunity to share a few thoughts with you.
Do you believe that the G20 has given an overall much bigger exposure to Indonesia, and in terms of now putting Indonesia on the center stage? How do you see that whole thing play out?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. As I think I said in my opening remarks, the global media exposure has been fantastic, and to have the conference go well, and to have people curious about Indonesia, and at a time Indonesia is doing quite well economically, I think it's just been a tremendous plus. And I think we can build on that. I think I wasn't, of course, at the G20 or B20 meetings in Bali, but a lot of my friends were, and the mood at the B20 meetings was fantastic. Cotton did a wonderful job. The local chamber, the foreign chambers of commerce did a wonderful job. AmCham, EuroCham, AusCham. They did really, I got a lot of positive feedback. And so I think there'll be some very good things to come out of this. And certainly the exposure has been tremendously positive. And so all credit, of course, the president, but all his staff did a remarkable job.
You had mentioned in between, Jim, that one of the emerging sectors is the digital economy, and Indonesia seems to have carved a place for itself. But the digital economy is not just about digital companies; it's about existing companies that are also transforming digitally, right? So, do you see any particular area that you feel Indonesia could contribute to the rest of the world, and not just to focus on how the domestic digital economy develops?
I'm not an expert in this area by any means, but the interesting thing about digital economy is it has no home in the sense that it's not culturally based, so it can be developed anywhere. An Indonesian program that works is the same as a Silicon Valley program that works. Now, in these areas, a lot of the scaling has already been done, particularly in the U.S. with your Amazons and all these companies. But we see, I think, some of the companies like Gojek leading the way here and similar services, but they're first in the market here. And we'll just have to see who the survivors are, who consolidates with who. We've seen consolidation in the Asian market with some of the Indonesian companies, with some of the Singapore companies. I just think it's a wide open field that knows no home. It just is for bright young people, if it were to come up with the next best idea, and it can be solved anywhere. So I don't see it as particularly grounded. But the thing about Indonesia, if you get the right services, the country's big enough, you can get scale where you don't have to be intimidated by the global players. So Indonesia can build up scale more quickly than a smaller country might be able to do. So that might be a little bit of an edge, but I don't really see that as having a flag. I really think that's just Indonesia provides a good environment for it. It's not overly regulated. And so I think Indonesia will continue to play a very big role.
So do you see the opportunity for digital to play a big role in the regional areas? Let's say the so many provinces that are there. And typically most of rest of Indonesia has been, resource-based, natural resources, agriculture, etc. Do you see a play there which should be probably explored?
Oh, absolutely. I know you're involved in another venture in education, and I haven't spent much time on education but it is one of Indonesia's Achilles heels. Elementary school education here is not up to regional standard generally. And so something like Orbit Guru that helps improve the quality of teaching around the region can bring national and international standards to the smallest areas of Indonesia. And this is really, the same can be done in healthcare. You don't have to, visit the doctor personally. If we can do these things online, there's just tremendous opportunity. And as we've seen, it doesn't have to overcome existing infrastructure. So there's a lot of opportunity. And yes, indeed, it's a good point. It's a good question that you asked, because this can really help the outer islands, if we still use that term here, but that have been hampered by lack of logistics, poor communication. Connectivity is the key, and this can really bring ideas and goods and services throughout the country in an unprecedented fashion. So there's still a very big upside there.
So that's great, Jim. In fact, that was a very good, insightful session. Thank you very much for joining the Indonesia Economic Forum.
Thank you for inviting me. Good luck to the rest of the conference, and good luck to all the participants. Let's hope the future is at least as bright as I've predicted it, and even better. So thank you all, and best wishes for every success.
Thank you. So, one of the things, I've known Jim from the very first day I came to Indonesia, because he offered me the first job, which made me come here. And what I've noticed is that he runs a program which he interacts with 150 Fortune 500 companies, which are part of his program. He has a program. And the insights that are generated at those discussions is somehow carried forward to what we are trying to do at the Economic Forum, because the Economic Forum wants to connect the pieces of the information that we have here in a broader level than just a membership of 150, right? So we want to talk about the larger picture of the overall thing. And Jim is on our board of advisors He's on the board of governors of the Economic Forum. So that, I think he kicked off a very good starting point for this discussion here is, there's something unique about Indonesia, is this ability to offer scale without being intimidated by global companies, which I think is a very powerful way of looking at how the ecosystem here might develop differently from how it might in Singapore or some of the other regions. So picking up on that theme, I would like to, in fact, Rajiv, are you here, Rajiv? Yes. So, just to introduce, Rajiv is co-founder at Spendflo. He has had many years of experience in the digital sector across nations and countries. So he brings that collective wisdom that has been around in the developing nations that have been implementing digital solutions. But what I found more unique was that at Spendflo, because they are in optimizing SaaS services, he gets a good picture of every other product that's in every other sector. SaaS is there in human resources, is there in sales, in marketing, in finance, in operations. There are SaaS products for, you name it, there's SaaS products for everything. So he gets a different perspective of what's happening and where the optimization story should start. So over to you, Rajiv. Would you like to address that?
Sure. Thanks, Sachin. So, welcome everybody to this panel discussion. And my thoughts on this, Sachin, is I believe that digital transformation is a core for several businesses today, right? And when all of us are talking about digital transformations, what do we actually mean by digital transformation? It is, in my opinion, it is primarily the integration of digital technology into every area of business. And that will help you to operate differently and drive better value to all your stakeholders. What does this entail? This entails that your culture changes. So from being a company that is siloed to working on building everything on your own to being very agile, looking at what technologies are available around the world to assemble it, to build a business that is more resilient and agile to go to market faster. So that is from a business standpoint. And even from a government and an economy standpoint, what it means is you are able to leverage digital technology into every aspect of services that you are providing to ensure that your citizens are getting better value across the value chain, right? Across all their interaction points in their everyday lives. So what we believe is what are the key drivers of digital transformation? Why do we really need it, right? So in today's world, digital first is survival. It is not an option. Being digital first entails you to rapidly adapt to changing customers and citizen needs and even behavior needs of everybody in the economy. Helps you to protect yourself with transparent data flows across your organizations. And third, it also helps you to ensure that you are able to adapt to other changes, be it macro or micro, very quickly. So how does organizations become digitally transformed, or how are you thinking about transformation, right? So in my opinion, there are 4 key drivers for digital transformation to be successful in organizations. So number 1 is the supply conditions. So do you have enough infra for you to be agile? So for example, this is where the advent of cloud has really transformed the way you're able to implement digital transformation. The emergence of SaaS has really enabled you to deliver digital transformations because there is a supply of infrastructure. Internet has penetrated pretty much into all countries today. Mobile is available for almost every citizen today. Data has become really affordable and cheap. What it means is everybody has access. And when everybody has access, it is important for businesses to be able to deliver services very quickly and efficiently to them. And what does it entail? You need to entail strong applications that you're able to build to meet customers and citizen needs and deploy them very quickly. That translates into adoption of cloud and SaaS technologies to be able to very quickly deliver those services. So here I'm not talking about physical services, I'm talking about services that can be digitized and delivered pretty quickly. So supply conditions, when your infrastructure is set, and this really translates into physical infra as well because your cables have to be set up, your towers have to be set up, roads have to be good. So today with Gojek, we are able to order food and somebody is able to deliver to you in 5 minutes. For that, a lot of infra has to be ready, and that has to be a precondition for digital transformations to be successful. The second is demand conditions. Are your employees and your people ready to adopt these newer technologies? So this translates to education as well. People should know how to adopt technology. So cell phone is a great example, right? So we were using 5 devices before: your cameras, your audio players, your communication, your telephones, and everything was separate. But today, everything is in your hand. But people adopted to that pretty quickly. Today, I don't need to teach somebody to watch Netflix. My 4-year-old daughter is able to watch Netflix without any learning. So consumerization of technology has become so easy. And if that translates into services for enterprises, I think employees and citizens will be able to adopt it pretty quickly. So, but that conducive nature or conducive environment for employees should be ready for us to drive digital transformations pretty efficiently is very important. Third is the obvious part of governments and the education bodies who are collaborating to ensure that people are adopting technology. Today, there are 300 SaaS products that are launched around the world every month. And when we say 300 products, these products can be used across organizations, right? Be it for, like Sachin mentioned, it can be for HR, it can be for marketing, it can be for marketing automation, it can be for marketing automation in a certain language, it can be for a certain audience. So today there are specific tools that are coming up to meet every purpose. And if we are not aware, if we are not continuously educating ourselves, and the government and the educational bodies are not enabling people to know where to look for and how to search and how to deploy them pretty quickly, the adoption of technologies might not be successful. So one key imperative for digital technologies to grow very fast is how people can adopt it and what kind of investments and enablement is being done by every stakeholder in the ecosystem to promote it becomes extremely important for adoption. And the last part that is very, very important for digital transformations to be successful is innovation and change. What kind of investments ultimately goes into building products and tech in the region that can enable you to be successful. So this is 4 key drivers for digital transformation, and when digital transformation is happening, how do you measure that it is successful? Right? Ultimately, it is the change in value or change in growth or change in resilience an economy and a company gets because of adopting to these technologies. And how do you optimally do it? Coming back to the core topic of this discussion, right? So this is all good, but how do I optimally do it? Because you can't have technologies that is being bought by everybody in the organization which are not talking to each other, which do not solve specific purposes as a whole, right? One most important parameter that we look at optimization is you have to ensure that the sum of parts gives you greater good than individual parts. So what it means is data should flow seamlessly within organizations and data should be very secure, because you need data to be protected, but it also should be accessible so that you are able to build different applications on top of it, and data flows seamlessly from last mile to the top so that you are able to take better decisions, and better decisions give you resiliency, right? So optimization framework, in my opinion, consists of 3 things. One is discoverability. So you need to know what problems you are solving and what technologies you need to solve those problems, and discover your whole landscape of what is required for you to solve. Second is the right way to procure and deploy. SaaS is extremely wide, similar to all other technology. Even governments today are coming up with multiple technologies that needs to be deployed to everybody, right? So be it SaaS, cloud, or other technologies that are coming up, you need to know how to optimally buy and deploy. So unnecessary technologies, unnecessary wastage should be avoided by all means, because that is harming the society as well, like Sachin rightly said, right? So the more technology adoption does not mean everything is greener. We are actually harming the environment more by using more compute, storage, and all those powers. So how do you transform that? By continuously being optimal about usage. Third is governance, so that your data, whatever application that you build, is governed properly so that unnecessary elements do not have access to it and you lose the purpose of deploying those technologies. So the overall good should not be spoiled by a few elements, which means that we should take privacy very seriously, we should take data security very seriously, and you should take your vendor risk very seriously when you implement digital technologies. And that ways, you are continuously optimized, you are continuously aware of the value you are delivering. And one beautiful thing about digital is everything is trackable. You can set up KPIs that are highly measurable. For example, customer experience is a great example, right? As a government today, you see in all airports, you have kiosks that talk about whether my services are good or not. If you land in a flight today in Emirates, you are able to get an immediate survey that asks you whether my food was good, whether my onboarding was good, whether the flight was on time. There are so many parameters in which you can measure efficiency of services being delivered, and that can be tracked end-to-end in digital. And that will help you to continually optimize on areas where you are lacking and make right investments there to improve those services. And at scale, this can be deployed at governments to a large extent. And I believe that from an optimization standpoint, getting the right tools, being optimal about it, and governing them pretty well is a great framework to think about for optimal digital transformations.
Thank you, Rajiv. Actually, you described it beautifully in terms of the landscape of this whole area, the factors that you talked about, the key drivers and the challenges. So I think we're going to pick up on that. I only have one comment that end of the day, the education about SaaS products is very much limited to the marketing budgets companies have. So you have a lot of budget and an imperfect product, that's the product that's going to be in everybody's hands. And great products who don't have marketing budget will probably not be adopted because they don't have. So that's another challenge, right? How do we educate the consumers to know what is the right product? And is there like an agency that can help build trust based on some recommendations? It's another area to look at. Okay, very good. So, if you look around the room and you look around the speakers, and you would all realize that there is one company here in the room who is probably the pioneer of SaaS products, because they have probably the most used SaaS product in the world comes from Microsoft. So Rob, I would like to invite you to first comment on, or take off from where Rajiv left, but also to talk about the larger framework of how you see this whole thing being optimized within Microsoft itself.
Sure, thank you, Sachin, and Rajiv, I would love to build on some of what you've shared there. Violent agreement with that. I thought you were going to refer to us as the organisation with the smallest marketing budget, because if I had $1 for every time somebody said I didn't know you could do that, and I'll start with that. I think a lot of people around here would probably nod when we think of Windows and Office as Microsoft. But over the past 10 years, we have transformed as an organisation. We are more of a platform organisation now. And from our perspective, through a far more empathetic and CEO, he's taken a view of, we want to see other people being successful. Our role and our company mission is to empower every person and every organisation on the planet to achieve more. And that's a genuine mantra in the way we operate, the way we make decisions around technology. We spoke to some of you around the room yesterday around times that we've stepped out of technology. We've reversed decisions. We've stepped out of markets as well. And the SaaS space is a great example. A large portion of our business is focused on enabling SaaS providers. We can't solve for the niche problem or challenge in every organisation, in every country, but how do we empower through scale, through taking away or working towards some of those solving security concerns, data sovereignty concerns, consolidation and reducing climate impact? How can we take the burden of some of that to enable a faster transformation as well? But I think we often look at, and there were some conversations yesterday around unintended consequences of technology. And that's a theme I'd like to continue through here, and it's driven some of our approaches in a number of countries. It's very easy. We're a publicly listed company. We have a sales organisation, but especially here in Southeast Asia, Asia Pacific, there's a very purposeful approach to building national plans. And For us, that national plan changes name every year. We cloud and AI country plans where we're helping to drive more meaningful and purposeful adoption of artificial intelligence, moving now to national transformation plans with the same mantra, but helping drive national and government transformation. And even picking up on the ambassador's point earlier around how do we support what we call the public sector. How do we have a distinct group, of which I'm part of in education, focusing on public sector organisations as well, and driving that transformation, as it is fundamentally different. The stakeholders are different for governments, and the goals and outcomes are different as well, which drives a lot of our thinking here. And we spoke about some of those unintended consequences could be job displacement, we spoke about earlier. I'd like to speak to some examples where we've worked with organisations around that, but they've been at an individual organisation level, driving AI or artificial intelligence and automation projects in large cement factories, displacing tens of thousands of workers. For us to, with a conscience, work through those deals and commercial constructs, we took the partnership with those organisations to work on reskilling their workforce as well, to proactively be part of that job recreation, upskilling, reskilling, whether that's within the organisation or finding others. Now that's also because it is an imperative for us as well. I mentioned briefly yesterday, we cannot help our customers drive their transformation. We certainly can't help national transformation agendas if there's a lack of talent. So reskilling talent and individuals with domain expertise, here being concrete manufacturing, we can really accelerate the transformation but reduce the impact as well. So we do have a large focus on that, and I encourage, as potentially one of the takeaways from the summit, how do we look at proactively addressing that job transformation? How do we reduce that gap between transformation? We heard about with renewable energy. We're closing down coal-fired power plants potentially, but we don't have another option. How do we not disrupt jobs faster than we are preparing people for the future jobs at a national plan level? And we spend a lot of time internally talking about this. It is important to us. And beyond that, if we look at technologies like artificial intelligence, key conversation around healthcare, data sharing. I'm sure many in the room have looked at precision medicine. I can take a drop of blood, I can send a sample off, I can get my DNA sequenced and get a personalised report. The opportunities for that are unthinkable. To scale quality medicine, to potentially focus on the greatest need and maybe mainstream, I dare not say automate, but reduce the overhead and cost for non-edge cases, for traditional medical needs. But at the same time, it's now possible, whether via security breaches or malicious acts, for somebody to understand my predispositions to diseases. How does that impact insurance? Can artificial intelligence or the use of the data actually be less inclusive? Can it create different minority groups? And that's the ethical question that I don't think anybody has the answer for. We, not proudly, but openly put our hands up around some of the scalable services that we were building around facial recognition. And the possibilities of facial recognition for security, for automation, for contactless access, for crowd controls, policing. But there's potentially unintended consequences of that as well, and the privacy elements around that. So we've scaled back some of those services that we were offering, and the idea was that we would have and not just Microsoft, there's others that have made just the same ethical decisions as well. I think tech companies have come a long way, but it's a genuine consideration around what technology could be used in a country and as part of a plan. So that meaningful use of technology is going to be a key element. But then so for me, it's how do we approach that in a balanced way? And that will be country by country. different, we spoke about data sovereignty requirements, use of technology, privacy laws. I don't believe this will move at one speed. I don't believe it's necessarily, hey, it's being done in Singapore, so why don't we do it in Indonesia, as an example. There are many other reasons to look at these challenges, but to me, it's how do we do that in a meaningful way? Because I do genuinely believe digital transformation is not digitisation. And I'm in the education sector, and it's a violent debate we have regularly. We've seen countries give every child in the education system a device. My home country, Australia, one student, one device. Ribbon cutting moment. No educator training, no infrastructure, no support services. The Australian outcome was probably neutral, but other countries lost an entire year of schooling due to inappropriate use of technology, because it wasn't part of a broader plan, it wasn't as considered, and so I think technology projects are still happening. We're seeing a resurgence of them post-COVID, especially in education as well, and that really raises some big concerns for me. But let's flip maybe to the positive and the optimisation here and creating new opportunities. We heard yesterday around some of the climate change projects that are happening, the potential that they're going to be multi-year projects moving in the right direction. I don't have a view on whether they're right or wrong. But if we take a look at something, again, happening here, we've spoken about Campus Merdeka, and that first step in really taking a different look at the education system. Again, we've got a long way to go, but there's a first step that's been taken, and I would cite Universitas Terbuka, the Open University here in Indonesia, and their Cyber Institute. The Cyber Institute's been running for a number of years, and recently we worked with them on, they had a goal of building courses for a whole new industry, producing graduates in the gaming industry. And we worked with them on how do we provide the platform and the technology so they could do this in an open and online way, but create 3,000 graduates in a period of 6 months with the skills to go on and start building games. And we're seeing gamification of everything. We're seeing esports as an industry. We're hearing it from the highest levels here in Indonesia, and Vietnam is doing similar as well. So I look at these cutting-edge examples of agility using technology in the right way, creating fresh graduates aligned to national economical opportunities. And in my mind, that's genuine transformation of education aligned to transformation of a national agenda. So I'll probably pause there because, Sachin, you know I will talk for hours, but the key for me is how do we do this in a considered way? How do we not look at technology for technology's sake? And how do we build partnerships? And it's not just a Microsoft government partnership. We welcome collaborations across other technology organisations as well. And I think there's a possibility to build that on both the work in Indonesia and across ASEAN as well.
Yeah. Some very good points, Rob. I want to connect back to what Ilham said at the beginning of his session, where actually there are certain projects which the people trust only if private sectors does it, and not a government. And there's a reason for that, because there's a certain track record, and I think Microsoft is in that position of having the trust of people. And the question I have actually, which I want to ask you is, I remember speaking to one of your senior leadership in Microsoft some time ago, and he said that when Microsoft comes into the market, we come with 1 million partners. And that 1 million partners are not just for that country, and that in that particular country, but from all around the world. There's so much collective wisdom available to Microsoft through all its partnerships around the world. Now, do you think that that kind of an opportunity exists in working with Indonesia, the ecosystem here? You mentioned building partnerships locally, but do you see that you can bring the entire army to the battle by mobilizing resources across the globe? Because, that collective wisdom may be the real thing that's needed.
I think it's a great question. And I'd like to start on the trust piece as well. And I have this conversation regularly. Sometimes it's a generational change required of trust in Microsoft or trust in a big tech company. We've openly made mistakes in the past, and it's a legacy that we live with, but we are thankfully now being judged on our actions today. And that trust is something that we don't want to be misplaced. And that is bringing, to your point, the army of partners, whether they be government, consultancy, academia, or technology as well. I think in education, you know, ed tech is booming. I think at one stage we had 3,500 ed tech partners building on our platform. So enabling choice in a secure way aligned to strategy is key there. There are other best practices. If we talk about, and I think this is the year of ASEAN, and my view on this is mainly EdTech, to be transparent. We've had a number of EdTech conferences recently, and the focus has been every single large, what we call ISV or software vendor or SaaS provider, is wanting to get into ASEAN, which I think is good and bad, because at the same time, we're talking to institutions here saying, we've got great products. We want to open new revenue models as we transform our education system. We want to go to market globally. And we're seeing private universities here, traditionally, some public, wanting to go and work with us in Vietnam. And can we bring the domain expertise as well as the technology through networks in Vietnam, as an example? So I think, to your point, bringing that best practices, more importantly, the learnings. We've literally written some books in transformation in some industries, and the do not can be larger than the what you could do. I implore people to learn from the mistakes that others have made. Insanity is repeating the same mistake multiple times. In so many of these industries, and in such a critical phase for Indonesia, I think to potentially leapfrog the lack of legacy in some areas, the opportunities there. Let's learn and let's break new ground. In my mind.
So it would be wonderful if the Economic Forum, Indonesia Economic Forum, could be the launch pad for creating such an initiative, because I think what's lacking in Indonesia is the consortium approach towards building the economy without looking at business competitive issues, which tend to largely dominate right now. So I'm going to go now to Gerry from Wantiknas, because I want to, after Gerry, I would like Dr. Bayu to give an overall view of what he's heard. But Gerry, you are in Wantiknas, and I think you have these kind of conversations almost every day. You have it at the national level, you go into the regions, you're listening to issues, you go overseas and you talk about what's happening in other countries and compare it to what's happening here. Do you see that there is a need for what Rob said and what Rajiv said, is of bringing the industry together to be actively involved in creating this kind of safeguards, or, you know, missing pieces of the puzzle should be addressed? So what's your view on that, and how do you see this discussion?
Okay, Pak Sachin, thank you. I'm Gerry from National Architect Council. This organization is the multi-stakeholders from governance side, also the business industry, also community or society in there. So we talk anything in that forum. In terms of digital transformation, the president respond about how urgency digital transformation. He declared in 2020, preparing the infrastructure, formulation the roadmap, strategic sector, integration, data utilization, national data center, and preparing digital talent. I talked to the Rajiv in this morning about how to optimize the application. Rajiv said they have the solution of the optimized application. Ministry of Finance told we have 24,000 applications in Indonesia. Minister say we need to how to optimize to using this application. I think maybe Rajiv must talk to the Minister of Finance. He have the solution. We have the regulation how to optimize that in the President Decree in 95 in 2018. we have the dictate about the general application and specific application. So in every government agency, if they propose the application, we have the clearinghouse. So we select this is a general application or specific application. If they propose the general application, we stop that application. Also, not the application. If the government agency propose the data center, the clearinghouse, we stop that. So the government today will talk about how to optimize using the resources to create the solution for the government. This means government need collaboration to the industry. The industry, we share the how to solution, how to optimize the using the application, data center, also like that. In terms of the Campus Merdeka, right? Like Robert said, we collaborate the industry, also the government. So government and education open the, we create the Campus Merdeka Belajar Campus Merdeka. It means the student or student can use the 1 semester or 2 semester go there. We give the 26 point grade, yeah, 20. So every student can implementing the knowledge in industry. So another Indonesia, I am and Portugal as a chair in the interoperability forum working group in World Bank. Indonesia, in terms of the connectivity, digital or connectivity, we need the interoperability because many system in there. So we focus the how to interoperability in there. So World Bank, I'm or Indonesia as a chair with the Portugal declare 11 module. Interoperability not yet the infrastructure. Interoperability focused in data. So it's mean if you can you need to collaboration from some system to other system. We need to focus not the infrastructure or we focus the data culture, data management, also data architecture. So that's the nationalistic council too, maybe. Thank you, Pak Sachin.
Thank you, Pak Gerry. But you know, the description you had of what your issues you're looking at and your organization, you started with the words, it's a multi-stakeholder organization, and because you report directly to the president, and you have a lot of interconnectivity with the various ministries, I think there's a lot of opportunity to work with Wantiknas rather than working directly with any one ministry, because you know this is a practical problem in Indonesia that the ministries are not connected. You talk to Cominfo, you talk to another ministry, they have their own agendas, they have their own policies, they have their own recommendations, and very rarely do they meet. So I think the way to do this is actually to empower Wantiknas, working with private sectors. And this approach has not been done enough. It should be done. And I think I would encourage, you know, Spendflo, Microsoft, and so many companies who are here. We have from Modalco, who is also part of the FinTech Association. But you see, they're all islands. There are so many islands. Where is this collective wisdom going into one place, which can therefore be coordinated across these various sectors, which are all different parts of digital transformation? I think Wantiknas has that opportunity to play that role of interconnecting all these different pieces of digital transformation. And that's the root of how you start optimization, because optimization has to take place across, because it's the same consumer. There's one consumer's consuming, you know, 17 different technologies, another one's using 25, another one's using 5. The answer lies in actually what the consumer is consuming, and therefore the optimization has to happen at that end, or at the corporate end, at the entity, business entity, which again translates down to so many consumers. So we are looking at a very superficial way of optimization without understanding that you have to go down to the consumer level, and then you have to look at a philosophy that interconnects all of this together. And I really like the idea that, at the Economic Forum would be partnering with Wantiknas to see through the digital transformation series, we have a program which we're going to follow up for the whole year, where we're going to take up these difficult topics and difficult elephants in the room discussions, which are necessary to be done. So thank you for your comments, Gerry. I'd like to actually invite Dr. Bayu because for two reasons. One is, of course, he's a domain expert. He's in the digital transformation journey himself. He advises a lot of banks. But more than that, I've known Dr. Bayu as the founder of the intellectual business community, which has a membership of a lot of very important and accomplished business people. And he brings to the table here the collective wisdom from the CEOs and founders of a lot of companies. And they're all companies well established, undergoing digital transformation. Banking sector definitely, for fact, that if you're looking at fintech on one side and you look at banking on the other side, where do the two meet? And that's an interesting conversation of optimization there, because two sides are looking at the same market in a different way, different philosophy, rarely meeting in consensus with each other, or in rather competing with each other, which creates a lot of reasons to optimize, right? So over to you, Dr. Bayu.
Thank you, Sachin, distinguished guests and participants. Well, I've been interested in digital transformation, I think, since 2010, and tried to think how to use this in our lives. So in 2013, I wrote a book here called How to Change, Revolutionize Our Education System in Indonesia Using Digital Technology. So I wrote it in 2013 and I published it in 2014. When the digital learning was not, I think, in the conversation of Indonesian people. And I wrote the second book in 2021 about the digital transformation of banks. Throughout the journey, I kept thinking, what is this digital transformation purpose for? And I agree with what Rob said, that how to use technology not for the technology's sake. So I come to the philosophy of what we are doing with digital transformation. Actually, the main purpose, the main goal is to get the happiness. Yeah, so the purpose of all what we are doing, even with the digital transformation, is to get the happiness of people, and it starts with happiness. So digital transformation is a way of life. I'm not offering a new religion here, but this is really a new preferred way of life to reach human happiness. And happiness consists of a lot of things in a portfolio that I think has been well defined and mapped by the UN by the 17 points of SDGs, right? So if we reach the 17 points of SDGs, that would be a happiness of the large amount of people, in this planet, in which if we can divide into the happiness of the relationship between people and people, which SDG number 1 to number 10, and then the happiness of the people connected with the environment, which is SDG number 1 to 5, and then people with the spirituality, which is SDG number 16 and 17. So all points of SDGs can be achieved better by digital transformations. So again, this is a new preferred life, how to achieve this new preferred lives to be implemented in our life so that we can achieve the happiness faster, right? So on the implementation side, I've done the research in 2018 for 31 CEO of banks. So I asked them, only CEO should fill these questionnaires. Do not delegate it to somebody else to answer it. So I got the answer from CEOs. If you delegate someone to answer, better you don't. Better you don't answer this. So I asked them questions, and one of the point of questions are what are the problems that you have to achieve the digital transformation that we need to do right now. So number one is what they say, a large chunk of it is the human resources, of course. Yeah. So what they mean with the human resources might be that they couldn't find the right human resources with the right skills and skill sets and mindsets and way of working that can bring their companies into digital transformations. I suspected that they forget that they also need to be transformed. I suspected that they forget they themselves are the problem. People always think that the problem is on the other people, right? So yeah, but that even enforced the point that human resources is number one problem for the digital transformation. Yeah. So about the human resources, of course, number one is the mindset. Whether you believe in it, whether you believe that this is the new, preferred, better way to achieve happiness, right? And number two, what they said, the problem is the infrastructure. 2018, we know the infrastructure is much worse than today. But even today, the infrastructure is not as good as we expected. I believe that some of our audience looking at our discussion from Zoom, from far away, maybe they have also connections problems to see us clearly here, or the voice might be interrupted. But yeah, I mean, that's the work of the government, that's the work of many people that to set up the infrastructure to support these digital transformations to be able to be implemented faster. Yeah. Number three that they said was that the investment that it is needed to transform into digital. Yes, we knew that transforming means that we have a new house in which we have to, you know, to move. We have to buy the new house, and not. I mean, my clients are banks. Most of the banks, you know, the place where the money is, right? So they have a lot of money, but even those only, maybe I think the largest banks have not really a problem with the investments, but those, most of the national banks still have problems with investments, especially with not only the devices, but mostly on the softwares, applications, right? The development of applications. And not to mention about what I already mentioned maybe some days ago, there were 1,600 regional banks, BPR, that I just talked with them with the FGD, that they, more than 90% of them would like to transform to digital, but they don't have money. Yeah, they're small, yeah, and they lack in human resources, and also how to implement that, how to get the digital devices and applications, in which I think Rajiv's offer with SAS is a very, very good solutions for them for the investments. Yeah, so we start with variable costs rather than investment as a fixed cost. And next is the consumers' readiness to get the digital transformation is number 4, and number 5, I think I only read 5 of it because that is the biggest problem that they had, right? So number 5 problem is the corporate culture. Yeah, we know that transformation means moving to something new. We have legacy, then you have to take care of the legacy. It's different when you start everything from new. You don't have legacy, you don't have anything that you have to live, that you have to deal with. How about your old employees that cannot change with you? What are you going to do with them? How about your old systems, your old procedures? All the things that have worked for you for a long time and gave you successes, then you owe them something. that you cannot just let them go and get something new, right? So the legacy has to be taken care of well. So I think those real problems that they face is that we have to consider how to solve this, and I think one of the solution is the cooperations, how to make this even better. Yeah, the interoperability, like Pak Gerry said, also is something very important to solve these problems. And just yesterday, I had in my group talking about the Cianjur earthquake that we had. Yeah, one of the persons in the group said, "Why there are so many people try to help, yeah, without everybody tried to jump there without any one big body, one big organization who coordinates to make it the best way to approach it." Yeah. And then I said, yeah, once we coordinate it and then have to go to one in organizations to help them, then you will be stuck with the bureaucracy of that organizations. Then you will lose the time. But one thing that we can do actually is to organize and to interoperate and to share the data, so that you know exactly which part has been helped, with what kind of help, what kind of needs that help that they need, what kind of helps that somebody else has already committed to supply, so that with data integration itself, information sharing itself, it helps a lot to coordinate. Yeah, but on the execution side, if you try to coordinate execution side, then you will get into trouble of bureaucracy. Yeah. So yeah, that's my 10 cents. Thank you.
I think it's $1 more than 10 cents. Actually, I'm very proud to say that, the Indonesia Economic Forum likes to amplify great ideas and hope that they become actionable. And that's actually the kind of journey we are on today in this session. There seems to be a lot of great ideas coming together, germinating into a kind of a cooperation or a collaboration, or probably some kind of an effort that can address some of these key issues, because I think this is the right time. We had Ambassador Manoj Bharti, who brought about this whole thing about when do we think about planet, when do we think about people. And that's part of this conversation, the way we are trying to look at how we find a solution. So Rajiv, I want to pose this to you before I come back to you, Rob, is that, you're getting a good lay of the land of how Indonesia works, and I think in the last 2 days, you've had a lot of interaction with various parts of the Indonesian economy and the shakers and movers, right? Does this kind of an approach interest you as a person as well as a company, Spendflo as a company? I'm saying, do you see opportunity is it inviting? Is it enough for you to say that there's a role that you can play in this?
I think I already jumped in. So, no, honestly, the kind of initiatives that are being taken and the topics that are being covered are so exciting that this is actually the ideal launchpad for the next generation of technologies to come in and penetrate with real impact. So this is an economy where from the top, everybody is opening up for digital adoption right now. Second, the ecosystem of investments and stuff like that is already set up and is thriving. Third, for us to enter, right, for a company like us, Spendflo, we are a new company. We have access to come in and work with key thought leaders around the country in a matter of a few weeks. Is great, right? It opens up a ton of opportunity. So, and we know that there's places where we can create impact and help. For example, across the ministries, if there's a problem that is wide open for banks, for where we can also create real impact. So that is the most exciting that an entrepreneur can look for, right? Ultimately, we want to create impact, and we see a fertile ground for us to come in and do it. So absolutely.
So I think you're in good company here with some of the key actors that could be involved. Rob, you wanted to add a point on this discussion. Over to you.
Yeah, if I may. Thank you, Sachin, and Rajiv, you've set it up nicely, but before I jump there, Dr. Bayu, I really liked where you went on digital transformation is about people. Either people will drive the need for that transformation will impact people. I just thought that was a massive takeaway for me from where you were speaking. But I was building on Gerry, your conversation, and I think Rajiv just spoke about it as well. The 24,000 systems in the Ministry of Finance alone, if I heard that correctly. I mean, thinking about the opportunity to maybe do things smarter or better, to consolidate. And I'll take a topical one of citizen services within government. If I look around the region, I come from a country where we have 7 different service applications in Australia, 7 different COVID trackers, and that's one thing alone. Let's not talk about healthcare and the likes and everything else. Unfortunately, I live in Singapore where there's a very consolidated view of this. There's a single application, there's centralised governance, procurement, it's something that citizens trust and it's adopted across the nation. Now, I appreciate just because it happens in Singapore doesn't mean it's possible to happen everywhere else. So for me, I'm thinking, how can we partner on navigating the stakeholders to impact change? There's so many examples of where we as a technology organisation, and others would be the same, and I'm imagining, Rajiv, you could probably bring a view of this as to how many things could possibly be optimised and consolidated, but how do we affect that change? How do we navigate? And I don't mean that to shortcut. How do we do it the right way? There's ministries and responsibility and there's governance in place for a reason, but can we accelerate that journey and potentially realise more value? And if I think about it, if we look at citizen services as the number one, that opportunity to leapfrog digitisation in those areas, there's digital tax, it's obviously a key theme here in taxation, but digital IDs, different applications, how do we be more secure by having less applications? So I'm kind of throwing it out there as what I think is another opportunity, and would love to understand how we could potentially partner in that area. Do it properly, understand the challenges that are worth solving, but potentially really accelerate some of those areas as well.
So I'd like to actually ask other people to jump in because, we are on track to do something that could be groundbreaking here, and I'll summarize that at the end. So I'll take, we have Ranjini, we have Nalin, maybe the lady goes first. Ranjini, yes.
Thank you, Sachin. Good morning, everyone here. I work with Rajiv at Spendflo, and I've been here since yesterday, listening to a lot of conversations, and I wanted to bring up something because listening to the gentleman who spoke on the panel earlier, there were words like interdependability, right? We spoke about happiness, unintended consequence of technology. One of the things that I think, I'm going to burst that happy bubble right now because I was here yesterday, and what I think is also timing with that looming recession coming in. I think something that needs to be looked into deeply is that optimization at this point. Like I said, I'm bursting the bubble now, and that is why. And the optimization that I'm speaking about is also, what I want to bring in here is also education. How do you optimize? And I'm not just talking about a certain organization. What do you do when the recession is coming? You look after your own family first, right? So therefore, you look after your own employees. How do you look after your employees? Not by laying them off. I've seen certain companies in other regions looking at optimizing on their infrastructure, their tools, to make sure they keep their people safe. Yeah, that interdependability comes in here with HR too. So I just want to throw that thought in there while we have that winter coming in. When we think optimizing, we need to think in different areas. Our people are most important.
I think you made a fantastic point, Ranjini. This is an essence of any kind of an optimization should be the outcomes to not just an organization, but its people, because there's no such thing as an organization. It is a collection of people. For the longest of time, I used to have this conversation, people saying, this company, that company. I said, at the end of the day, there's no company, it's people. You don't send an email to a company doesn't reply to you. There's somebody there who's actually responding, who has a certain responsibility or a job title, and you're interacting with people end of the day, and we can't forget that. We get caught up in this bureaucracy of organization structure. So you made a very good point, and I think that's one of the key takeaways that we would take into this conference. Nalin, you wanted to add a point?
Just a few points. For a person who writes 1 page a year, I have written 1 page today. In Sanskrit, there's a word called Sanyam. Sanyam means tempered decision making, right? Control. So I agree with everything being said, but I would love to take the burst the bubble a little further. So I heard about the 24,000 apps that need to be optimized. If it is optimized to 1,000, it will leave 23,000 businesses without a business. It's like saying, let's have one news channel, one university, one political party. Why do we have so many? There is a certain beauty in a large number of things coexisting peacefully. And that is the message from humanity, right? The second point I was looking at was, one of the biggest oil refiners in the world and one of the richest people, Mukesh Ambani, 4 years ago said, data is the new oil. Yet in G20, we could not have agreement on data like Pa Ilham said he wanted to, but we had 40% of the FDI coming in on oil. So there is a disconnect of the political class to what the world is supposedly going to, or at least the richest people are talking about. One topic that, Dr. Bayu, Rob, and Manoj Bharti, His Excellency, touched upon is the effect on people. And the fact that jobs get transferred from Industry 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. But there's a fundamental difference between what happened in the past and what is happening today. In the past, you were teaching people to shift from a manufacturing job to a manufacturing job, not a digital job. The world working population was 40% lower than it is today, and people lived on an average 10 years less. So the mass, pace, and type of job displacement and shift that is happening is huge. So what really needs to happen is governments that control all K-2 schooling across the world need to shift from schooling to skilling. If they don't do that, with social media amplification, which was not there in the past, the unrest will amplify and you will have a huge demographic nightmare. And that's not true just for here, but even India. Last 2 points. We heard about the internet and how we are talking of splinternet and intranet and control and for security, etc. I agree to all of that. But what happened to the new dawn of internet sold to us 30 years ago, that it is the greatest democratization of information? You can find anything from anywhere for free. What happened to all that? Nobody speaks of the consumer. You are going to take away my rights. You are going to control what I see. You will put firewalls. You will control everything. Nobody speaks of the consumer. Everybody's talking of the corporate, and everybody's talking of the government. What about my rights as a consumer? And lastly, I heard Rob say that edutech companies are lining up to enter ASEAN. That may be very good for their balance sheets. But countries should be very careful what they allow in. Why should we allow them in? What kind of crap are they bringing in? Is it even relevant to our culture? Look at Qatar. They are holding a World Cup without beer. They are strong on their culture. Why do we allow everybody in? Without investment, without understanding a culture, without adapting, without hiring local people. Why should we allow all these foreigners in? They may want to queue up, but we should not allow them in. We should pick and choose the best that is available, ensure they invest in this country, ensure they adapt, they set up legal entities, and then only allow them in. Those are a few points I had.
Thank you, Nalin. I think in the whole framework of a discussion, these are the little corner posts that must be put around the discussion, because you can't have a collaboration that does not address these little elephants in the room. So a good, I would say, checklist for us to put into like a working paper that would come out of this session. So anybody else would like to say a few words? Who's not spoken before? Feel free. We still have another 16 minutes, and I do want to wrap up, but that's, I want to do that after anybody else who would like to speak, would like to say something. Would you, Ifi? Yeah, silakan. Pa Indra, you're here. Oh, hi, Pa Indra. Good to see you, Pa. I'm sorry I didn't see you as you had come in. So would you like to add to this?
I just want to share a little bit on my experience on digitization or digital transformation. About November 2020, I went to a place called Ujung Genteng. It's a southern tip of Sukabumi in West Java. Over there, I interacted with a lot of students who were not able to go to school online, simply because there were no sufficient signals there, mobile signals. And I also tried a Zoom conference there, so which I had to do from their school. I had to travel about 30 minutes by car to a beach, and I borrowed a room from a hotel there. So I can imagine that what you said about the whole year being schoolless. I'm in Indonesia. It's probably not a year. It's more than a year, about 2 years. And also, we do a lot of entrepreneurship training and mentoring. We try to do online with in a city of Trenggalek. Trenggalek is in East Java. So one is West Java and the other is East Java. In the city of Trenggalek, normally we do a training of 1-day training, but they weren't able to use Zoom, so we scaled down to eventually using WhatsApp text. And from 1-day training becomes 4-day training, because apparently in a family they share the mobile device, right? So each family members probably have 2 to 3 hours usage of a mobile device. And because it was converted from Zoom to WhatsApp, so only text, and they did all their homeworks using text. We were able to complete the training but in 4 days, but we need to measure the effectiveness also. So I think connectivity in digital transformation is a major challenge in Indonesia. I would say we're about 20 to 30% here. In the major cities, yes, 80, 90%, but in rural areas, maybe as low as 20 to 30%. Also, I would like to note that the skills in operating anything digital is about 30% among the entrepreneurs, the micro entrepreneurs. So that's a big challenge also. And I mentioned hardware before in terms of signals, connectivity, and ownership of the device within a family. So I think I would like to close my whatever I'm trying to share here is by sometimes we come with a thinking that Jakarta solution is good for Ujung Genteng solution, and Jakarta solution is good for Trenggalek solution, and we forget that they probably have their own solution that we most of the time overlook and try to impose our Jakarta solution. Thank you, Sachin.
Fantastic point, Pa Indra. Actually you nailed the issue very well, because this is a challenge we've all been looking at from so many levels. And if you were to rewind 5 years or 10 years ago, probably everything would have been on SMS and not on WhatsApp. So going forward, I wanted to actually post exactly what Pa Indra said to the competent people in the panel here. Do you think 5G will be a quantum leap in this area where it would address the connectivity issue in a big way, or would it take it back to, okay, only the haves can have 5G because the handsets are expensive and things? Do you see any kind of a solution coming up to this in the next immediate future? Anybody here? Maybe Rob? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. We're always looking for what's next. And I'm going to throw it back to Australia. We don't have internet connectivity across the country. You know, a developed country, yes, we're large, similar geographical challenges. The problem is not solved. The haves get more, the have-nots, it's that 80-20 rule. 80% of the population might be, I don't know, 60% of the landmass. And when connectivity becomes critical to deliver the basic services, it definitely creates a gap. Now, we have other things. Starlink is a possibility. There are other services that are coming, and I'm optimistic. But I'll point back to, it was about 7 years ago when Microsoft acquired Nokia, and we had some folks from the Nokia team as part of our public sector group, and they were doing regional education and literally shipping SD cards that were going into very low-cost mobile devices or something similar and being plugged into maybe a TV or just off the device. And that was a way of delivering content at scale for certain programs. Relatively low cost, not so agile, still training required for the educator or the facilitator at the endpoint location as well. So all of the challenges we talk about now of potentially using, I'm going to say Teams, not Zoom online, for digital learning existed back then. So I think we can bring more technology and maybe solve for 80%. There is going to be a genuine need for hybrid. There's potentially a need for paper still. And that's I think we need to look towards avoiding growing the divide or the education divide through technology. I don't have the answers, to be honest, but I don't know that another iteration of better connectivity will solve that problem until we can get ubiquitous access. And then electricity is the next one. So, I think we've got multiple layers of the challenge there.
Rajiv, have you seen anything like this in the countries that you guys have been in?
Yeah, see, the pandemic was pretty brutal around the world, right? It made everybody neutral. There's no country that escaped it. But there were local solutions that really worked well in a lot of villages, even in India, Nigeria, and others we've seen, where the only way they were able to access to anything remotely useful was through Teams or Zoom or others. And great job by some of these tech giants that made it free as well. But not having hardware and not having connectivity is something that is not something that was solvable immediately. So one thing that we saw as an alternative that a lot of institutions did was they recorded WhatsApp videos of classes and just shared it. Instead of making people come live into classes, they shared videos, short videos like TikTok kind materials that were shared out. PDFs of books were shared. So the data compression and the advancement in that technologies made it really easy for good quality content to be shared at minimal cost or minimal impact, right? So yes, 80% of problems can be solved when infrastructure is ready. But to the 20% where infra is not ready, we have to come up with alternatives where we'll be able to serve. And we saw that even there, technology really helped to reach to the last mile.
Oh, that's fantastic. In fact, I have heard similar stories of a lot of training companies trying to deliver, because of the pandemic, information and using all these mixed hybrid tech. And I think, that's another point that, sometimes we are not even aware what solutions are out there. And we use the most popular one, the one with the biggest marketing budget is the one that gets used, right? So sometimes some features are not even known. And Rob made that point that Teams has got features which people don't know. And if they use it, there's a reason to use it, or there's a cause or a case in point, then that feature gets exposed.
No, one point I wanted to actually counter Nalin's view as well. Right, so when we are saying that there are 24,000 applications we need to optimize and rationalize, doesn't mean throw away 23. Okay, it is also about right-sizing usage, like how we said. So teams will have 100 features. The adoption of only 20% of features is there. Means that if we increase the adoption to 40% features, you don't need 3 more solutions. So that is optimization. It doesn't mean that we don't need other solutions. The other solutions will be required for others as well. So, but that is one. And another interesting point is on the depth of solutions required for different problems, right? So for a K-12 education company, you need a set of features, but for a university, you need a completely different set of features. When you go into PhDs, you need a different set of features. So the ability for, there are tools available, there are local solutions available. As you said, it is the marketing budget that gets the visibility, but it is also imperative for local ecosystems to be available to promote things for different verticals and different horizontals to be able to adopt different solutions. So I think one action that I think we should definitely take as a collective forum is education on solutions. And that has to be done through micro forums. It cannot be done at a global scale. For example, different marketing groups, different developer groups, different communities need to be set up. And that can be organized at a scale where you can identify which of the verticals where you need communities and knowledge, and probably share that knowledge through bringing in different solution partners for that. In fact, one community that does it really well, I saw recently, is a community called TAI. It's called the Indus Entrepreneurs. So this is like a bunch of successful executives who are around the world who invest in startups together. And they bring in the collective knowledge of different verticals, different horizontals and stuff like that. But when they go in and invest together, there is a bunch of portfolio companies that they have invested in. For those companies' products, they actually set up different forums where the products can come and pitch. So you help each other grow. So if a local solution that is available in Jakarta can be leveraged for an area in Java, somebody has to bring it there. And for that, we need smaller forums.
Good point. Nalin, you want to
Just
respond?
a quick one on that, I run a for-profit company also, so don't get me wrong. I'm not a socialist. And I am a foreigner. So he makes a good point. It doesn't mean everything gets junked. But it should not lead to a situation that the biggest becomes bigger and bigger, and the smaller ones go away. Why? 70% of the GDP comes through SMEs. Let's take a point. Digital companies do not hire as many people as non-digital companies. So every time you replace, every time you optimize, there is a human impact. The question that Dr. Manoj, His Excellency asked, and Dr. Bayu asked also, are we in the pursuit of profit or pursuit of happiness? That was the question. I'll expand on an example that Rob gave, that Microsoft went into a large organization, delivered an AI solution that could lead to job losses, and Microsoft worked with them to reskill the workforce. Absolutely the right thing to do. But if 70% of the economy is SME, you think SMEs are going to spend money on reskilling their workforce after they lay them off? They don't even pay them what legally they're supposed to pay as layoff charges. So there is a human cost. The question is at what pace? We can't stop change. We should not. I'm not suggesting that. I'm saying the pace at which we go and what human impact it is having, at some point it will become political. At election time, 100,000 unemployed people stand up and say, I got unemployed. Things will get reversed at least for 6 months to a year.
Yes. So, yeah, silakan Pak.
Yeah, yesterday I come from Korea. I met the Pak Gogot. Pak Gogot, right now the attaché of education and culture. We talk about how to solve that situation. I think I agree with the Pak Indra, not to push the solution in Jakarta to the Ujung Genteng or Trenggalek. So Pak Gogot say not to push the digital solution to the education, but how to transform the education using the to support. He said about using the tracing and tracking, just using tracking and tracing, not the push how to zoom in or digital education, not yet. Just using digital tracking and tracing, and then we can student and teacher met in the school. I think Pak Gogot said like that. Jadi in Trenggalek can adopt it, not the Jakarta solution like the Indra.
Good point. So I think we're going to come close to a wrap. I would like to wrap up here. I think the biggest outcome here that I've seen is, Ilham started the morning with a very interesting statement, which I found was compelling, is that I had to ask him this question, that if G20 did not deliver any consensus on what the digital transformation initiative should be, what should have been a good outcome, right? And then we also talked about that maybe that good outcome should be pursued by the next chairmanship by India because of India's competency in that area and experience in that area, etc. But however, Ilham pointed out that nothing stops Indonesia from taking that chapter on in ASEAN's chairmanship, because Indonesia is the chair of ASEAN in 2023. And we could start with that conversation right now in preparation for ASEAN and make sure that whatever initiative we are putting together can be looked at an ASEAN context and not just maybe execution in Indonesia, but absolutely applicable in ASEAN. And that might be a great starting point for us to put together some kind of an initiative as an outcome of today's roundtable. So I'm very keen that the IEF would like to take the initiative to help put things together among all the people who are present here and lay it open to a larger group of people who would feel that they have something to contribute in this. It's almost like an aggregator role. And when we say an aggregator role, it has to follow the principle that Dr. Bayu said earlier today, that in his example of the earthquake relief initiative, that you get stuck with the bureaucracy of an organization if you ask one organization to coordinate. To be honest, actually, the Wantiknas is set up in a very nice way. It is not a bureaucratic organization. Because of the way it is structured, you are not implementing, but you are recommending and you are interconnecting. So that structure of Wantiknas may be the way to go, which helps put together, because as a quasi-government role that you have, you're not stuck with the bureaucracy that a government institution typically has. That's one. And secondly, it's leadership with Pa Ilham as the chief executive and Pa Gerry and the head of the, chairing of the execution committee, might be a great way to champion this kind of a cause of putting together a framework. So, of course, we are only germinating the idea here today. Planting a seed, we still have to pour water till it becomes a plant, and that might be something that IEF might want to take on over the next 3 months. Because remember, we are all, the chairmanship of ASEAN is not that far, it's only 1 year. So you have to have something going by February so that you can actually work on it for the remaining 10 months, right? So I think this is something that would be a key takeaway, something very actionable. And what everybody here has contributed is actually going into the very roots of a starting point of something which we hope in a year from now we can measure and see where we have come to. And anybody who has not been able to contribute or have some ideas, remember this conversation doesn't end now. It's only the session that ends now. You're free to contribute, send us emails, WhatsApp messages, have another call with us, give us feedback on the social channels, or maybe join, we could organize something not too far in the near future which helps us to crystallize some of these ideas into an actionable plan. With that, I would like to close. I'd like to have a warm applause to all the speakers today. And thank you very much. We have exactly 45 minutes break because Pa Sandy Uno is going to be here soon. I just want to remind you what his session is all about. Pa Sandy has, in my opinion, been one of the biggest champions of digital transformation for many reasons, not just because of his understanding or investment into the sector, not like that. Because Pa Sandy, having been a vice president candidate who was out campaigning, probably has visited more interior parts of Indonesia than any other candidate. He was everywhere. He carries with him the experience of what it means to be in an outerlying part of Indonesia. He understands, he has interacted with, spoken to people. In fact, Pa Indra Uno, who explained the problem that is being faced, it is because of that interconnectivity that Pa Sandy has with the people that has given that insight that could be shared today. And Pasandi's current role as a Minister of Tourism and Creative Economy, and I stress on the second part, creative economy, because creative economy is very much about what we're talking about now. Digital is a part of creative economy, whether it's programming, coding, and several other initiatives within the creative economy is all influenced by digital transformation. And Pasandi is the perfect person, and we are very privileged that we have Pasandi every year of the Economic Forum from the very beginning. It would be the 9th appearance of Pasandi, at the Economic Forum. So I think it's one of the most insightful opportunities for us to talk to somebody who can action whatever we talk about tomorrow. He is in that role. So we are talking about actionable insight. This is the session to share it with the person who can make it active tomorrow. So he's in that position as the minister, and we are very fortunate that we have him. So I would request all of you to have your lunch break and be back here at 1 o'clock as soon as Pasandi arrives. Given 5 minutes, for him to settle down, we will get started. Thank you so much, and see you soon.